What do you think about taking a journey with me? Maybe to a place in your thoughts that you've never been. To get right to it, each one of us lives in a world that is heaped with deception and lies. Think about it. Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, you know, um, that's where we came from. Lies. Society itself is an organism which feeds off the life source of each one of us. Manipulators at every level, working to get and rarely ever give in return. Religions are little more than businessmen who prey on the ignorance of the sheeple. Politics is not even worth mentioning. And neither is anything that comes out of Hollywood. What about the news media? Right now in the Middle East, there is as close to war as they will get. Now, things are heating up day by day. Do you hear anything in the news about that? Why not? Now, what a crazy world. And then there's us. Why do we do the things we do? It seems like we do what we have to do instead of what we want to do. What would you do if you were free to do anything at all? Well, to be totally free, to do whatever you wanted. Okay, well, maybe not. For apparently no one would survive such freedom, and we would just prove that we require rules to keep us in check. In recent history, the more advanced cultures have adopted some semblance of the Hebrew Ten Commandments for their law and order. Now, religions galore have sprung up under these rules of engagement, and yet, what did they ever really achieve but to pronounce every participant lawless or a hypocrite? And it almost seems that all religious people, their religions use the people's guilt and their fears to accommodate a costly salvation for them. Okay, what about those 10 rules? Who came up with those? Well, Hebrews of old called him Elohim, which is a generic God to us today, whatever that means, because God can really mean anything or nothing at all. But more than that, it's like, why would a supreme, all-knowing deity give humanity rules which they know we could never keep? I mean, was it just to show how ignorant, how arrogant, or how plain hopeless we really are? Come on, let's get real here. What other reason could there be? And if men actually conjured up the rules, wouldn't they pronounce themselves condemned in the process? There's people who actually try to be good, which is wonderful. But even so, what measure of good can they possibly go by that isn't doable? achievable. But then again, I guess it all proves that, people have to have some sort of hope so they can keep going from one day to the next. And then come those who are not religious and who must contend with those who are. Oh. But, as long as everybody acts civilized, I guess it works, at least for now. Now, for those who are non-religious and are so proud to be that, there remains the task for them to explain how the universe itself operates on absolute uniformed laws of physics. Like, where did those laws originate to make everything else originate? Hello? And what about the human cell? Let's look at just one cell. 1 out of 37 trillion in the human body. And the DNA code that's required, some 3 billion letters in perfect sequence for that cell to survive and grow. I mean, come on. That's all by chance, right? Now we could go on about how the human race is supposedly evolving, when it's more like an experiment gone desperately wrong. Isn't evolution of humanity like give a worm enough time without lunch breaks, and it could eventually write what you're hearing right now? True intelligence demands that in order to determine what does not exist, you have to be able to explain absolutely everything that does exist. Until then, we're at the mercy of the voice of reason, which demands that we question absolutely everything, lest we determine to know nothing for sure. Now, as much as the most intelligent of humanity would like to throw out the Bible, it remains the one thing that we all must contend with. For in it, we actually face our greatest hope and our greatest fear at the same time. Like it or not, that one book is the rock which bashes us all into oblivion. For in it, it condemns every man, woman, and child to an everlasting and eternal hell if we do not do what it asks. And it matters absolutely not what we may say or think, for that threat stands and spans the entirety of human history. And pretending it is not so only achieves personal salvation from the requirement of salvation. Either way, humanity is required to figure out where we stand in light of Elohim or minus Elohim. How do you figure that? Okay, in all honesty, maybe the answer really is in the Bible itself. For not even that book agrees with what the religious people say about it. For instance, look at the Jews today, who incidentally passed down this book to all of us. Do they do what it says? What about the Christians who tote around their Bibles, all over the place? Do they do what it says? What about some other religion? Do they do what it says? No. Not that I know of. If anything, they simply use this book to justify their need to appear righteous. Feel good about themselves. What about the latest group, the Messianics, who have tried to correct what the Jews and the Christians have apparently, overlooked? Does anyone want to answer for them? And is anyone even wise enough to know anymore? Like, how are people supposed to lead someone to a truth if they're uncertain themselves? People say, well, you have to have faith, right? But, but faith in what? Faith in who? Is the success of faith based upon how much you believe, or is it in what you believe? Now, doesn't it require the same amount of faith to believe in a fairy tale as anything else? Now here it is. Faith must be backed by adequate evidence, or it is nothing but a fairy tale. I'll repeat that. Faith must be backed by adequate evidence, or it is nothing but a fairy tale. Now, it has been said that you can make the Bible say anything you want. You sure can. But only to those who are ignorant of its true contents. And those contents take decades of study to really know what it says and what it doesn't say. And in the several translations and languages that are involved. And have we given it all that? And if not, then how can we have an opinion about it? Here's something I bet you don't even think is actually in the Bible. My being hates your new moons, and your appointed times. They are a trouble to me. I am weary of bearing them. And when you spread your hands, I hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I do not hear. That's in Isaiah 1:14-15. In Amos 5:21 it says, I despise your religious festivals. Your assemblies are a stench to me. And in Matthew 15:9, but in vain do they worship me, teaching as teachings the commandments of men. That's in the Bible. Okay, but, this is addressed just to the Jews, right? Because, they wrote it. But what if it's addressed to everyone who tries to impress Elohim with their religious piety? Could it be that the Bible itself is against religion? Okay, now in the book it declares that Elohim pre-existed all else. Some people really have a problem with this. But the more you really ponder it, really ponder it, it actually makes more sense than when you think that absolutely everything came from absolutely nothing. even if we don't agree with the Creator, we're left with little but a colorful nothingness. Without a Creator, everything will be subject to whatever anybody spews forth. No truth, no hope beyond what we can invent. And nothing we can invent would be true. Picture a cat, not this cat, swinging above an endless abyss by its own tail. That is what we have when we are left up to our own imaginings. Okay, now, isn't it bad enough that almost every Bible translation has been changed to fit the intellect of the translator? I mean, you know, how do you know what you're reading is true or right or worth reading? And yet, what difference does it make when almost nobody reads it anyway? You know, much less does what it says. And also, isn't it true that even the worst transliteration, has more to it than anybody really cares to process? So we can't use a translation or the people who read it as an excuse. You know, more than not, all too many people have used Christians as their justification to stay clear of the Bible, when indeed they had nothing to do with writing the original Bible. You know, that book was written by the Hebrews, not by the Christians. So, Christianity has only been around some 500 years. You know, and that's, back then, that's when the Hebrew characters were given English names and terms, like God and Jesus, which none of those were ever in the original. They're made up terms. You know, Christianity has, in a sense, taken the ball away from the Hebrews and their own Bible and required them to play by the Christian rules. And as this is accomplished by those who decided that the Hebrews, as well as everyone else, must bow to the English Savior and must become a Christian to be saved. When in reality, the Bible is not a Christian book at all, but rather a Hebrew work which Jews and Gentiles alike must contend with. Now, did you know that Bible sales are strictly prohibited in the Bible? I mean, you know, publishers today didn't write it, and yet they're making money off of it. That's why it's prohibited. And also, you know, any kind of change within the Bible is prohibited. And yet, you know, look what we have. So, anyway, so somebody might ask today, so what in the world does the Bible really ask of us? And here it is. And what does Elohim require of you but to do right, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your Elohim? That's in Micah 6:8. And there it is. No religion to it. Just walk humbly before Elohim. That can't be too hard. Who wants to go first? Now please watch the rest of this journey in the second video that I have here. Thank you.